Dear students, today we'll see experiment number 7 from System Software and Operating System Laboratory. The aim of this experiment is design, develop and implement a C or C++ or Java program to simulate working of shortest remaining time and round robin scheduling algorithms. Experiment with different quantum sizes for the RR algorithm. So, here you have to design, develop and implement a program to simulate the working of these two scheduling algorithms. So the first one is shortest remaining time scheduling algorithm and one more is round robin scheduling algorithm. So already in the theory we have discussed about these two, that is shortest remaining time scheduling algorithm and round robin scheduling algorithm. So we know that whenever we have the number of processes that are waiting in the ready queue and which are waiting to acquire the execution, so which are waiting for the execution, so in that case how exactly the scheduling will takes place. So we know that in the first one, that is the name itself indicates in the shortest remaining time scheduling, the name itself indicates shortest remaining time. So each time, at each time stamp, we have to search for a process which is having the shortest remaining time of execution, and only that process should be allowed for the execution. Okay. And the second one is round robin. So in round robin means we'll be having a time quantum, a time stamp. So every process will be given that much amount of time for the execution. So here starting from the first process till the last process, so each time a particular process will be allowed to execute for that time quantum, and whenever it completes that time quantum, the next process will be allowed for the execution, and so on. So once one round is over, in the second round, by subtracting the time quantum, whatever the remaining time of execution is there, so for that again according to the time quantum, the processes will be allowed to execute. So we'll see one example also along with the program here. So first we'll see the example of this round robin scheduling algorithm. So here, as I told you, in round robin, so we'll be having a time quantum. So here in this example, we have taken the time quantum as 4, means every process will be allowed to execute for 4 milliseconds. So here you are given with the processes and the burst time of those processes. So in our example, we have 3 processes, P1, P2 and P3, and the burst time of P1 is 24, burst time of P2 is 3, and of P3 is 3. So when you schedule the execution of these processes according to the round robin for a time quantum of 4 milliseconds, as I told you, every process will be allowed to execute for 4 milliseconds, and after that the next process will start execution. So for our example, the Gantt chart is shown here. So the execution starts at 0. So the first process is P1. So although the burst time is 24 milliseconds, only 4 millisecond quantum time is there. So it will be allowed to execute for 4 milliseconds. So from time 0 to 4, the P1 will be executing. So after that, we have to take up the next one, that is process P2. So for process P2, the burst time is 3, which is less than the 4 millisecond. So although the time quantum is 4 millisecond, but the burst time is only 3 milliseconds. So that's why the P2 will execute only for 3 milliseconds, that is from 4 to time 7. So after this, the next process P3 is taken. And one more thing you have to remember, whenever you, for P1, whenever you execute for 4 milliseconds, you have to subtract 4 from this 24. So out of 24, 4 milliseconds it has executed. So the remaining time of process P1 will be 20 here. So after that P2, so it burst time is only 3 milliseconds. So all 3 milliseconds are executed. So the remaining time is 0. So for process P3, again the burst time is 3 milliseconds, but the quantum time is 4 milliseconds. So only 3 milliseconds it will execute from 7 to 10. So here also the remaining time of process P3 will become 0. So after this there is no any next process. So that's why again it will come back to the first process. It will check the remaining time. So here the remaining time is 24 minus 4, it is 20. So again out of 20, so again 4 milliseconds will be executed from for process P1. So from time 10 to 14 the P1 will be executed. So after this again from 20 you have to subtract 4, 20 minus 4 it becomes 16. So after that again it will check for P2. For P2 the remaining time is 0 and for P3 also the remaining time is 0. So we don't have any other process apart from P1. So that's why the P1 itself will be executed for the 4 milliseconds. Okay, so here from 10 to 14 P1 will be executed, so remaining time will be 16. So again from 14 to 18 the P1 will be executed for 4 milliseconds, the remaining time will be 12. So again from 18 to 22 the P1 will be executed, so remaining time will become 8. So from 22 to 26 P1 will be executed, the remaining time become 4. And from 26 to 30 the P1 will be executed, the remaining time of P1 will also become 0. So here your process will stop. So in this way the this round robin scheduling algorithm will work. Okay, so now we'll see the program, how exactly these things are implemented in our program. Okay, so already we saw the aim of this experiment. So the aim is to design, develop and implement a C or C++ or Java program to simulate the working of shortest remaining time and round robin scheduling algorithms. Experiment with the different quantum sizes for the RR algorithm. So here we have taken a C program. We have written a C program to implement these two algorithms. So first we'll see the round robin scheduling, and after that we'll see the shortest time remaining scheduling algorithm. So here again initially we include these header files, that is hash include stdio.h, hash include stdlib.h, and one more hash include float.h. So again here every process will be having the again number of data structures. So that's why to deal with, to handle all those things, we declare a structure for the process. So it is struct process. It is having the data members as int num. So this num indicates the process number. Every process will be having a number with which the process will be denoted. So along with this we need these simple variables, these simple data structures which are with respect to every process, like float bt for the bus time, at for the allowable time, after that we have ft, and wt for the waiting time, tt for the turnaround time, and rt for the remaining time. Okay, so this is the structure process. So after this we have declared the variables of this structure variable process. So struct process, so here we have taken the array of structures, that is p of 20, pq of 20, pr of 20 and temp. Okay, so after that here we have taken again some local variables like int I, j, tq, k, tq underscore used equal to 0, choice, and int cpu. So we have taken some floating point variables also. So float total 1 equal to 0.0, te total 1 equal to, sorry, here total equal to 0.0, te total 1 equal to 0.0, sum underscore wt equal to 0.0. This is to hold the sum of waiting time. Sum underscore tt equal to 0. This is to hold the sum of turnaround times. Sum 1 equal to 0.0, sum 2 equal to 0.0. Okay, so after this we have the body of this particular round robin function. So before we see the body of these particular functions, we'll start the discussion with the main function. So this is the main function. In the main function we declare one more local variable, that is n, and the int n. So we have an infinite loop here for, so as we are going to implement two different algorithms in this program, we will make use of a switch statement. So initially it will display the message as enter the choice. Okay, so after that the choice are displayed. So one is for round robin, two is for SRTF, that is shortest remaining time first scheduling algorithm, and third one is exit. So whatever the choice the user enters, that is read into the variable choice, and based on this choice we have the switch statement. So case 1 means that indicates the round robin scheduling algorithm. So let us see what happens in round robin scheduling algorithm. So in round robin scheduling algorithm, first we will display the heading as round robin scheduling algorithm, and below that we have to read the number of processes. So here we read scanf %d %n, the number of processes in the variable n. So after that we have to read, see, for round robin scheduling algorithm we need to know the bus time of all the processes. So to read the bus time, we have used the for loop here. For I equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, printf enter bus time of the process percentage t. So each time we take, will display the process number also after the particular message. So enter bus time of process percentage t, and we take the process number in round robin starting from 1. We will not take 0. So I starts from 0. So that's why the first process will be 0 plus 1, that is 1. So each time whatever the bus time that the user enters, so that we have to read in the variable p of I dot bt. So before that, what we do is, before we, along with reading the bus time, we will also initialize the process numbers also. Okay, so it is pq. So one thing remember, so for round robin scheduling algorithm, we have used the array for the processes as pq, and for shortest time remaining scheduling algorithm, we have used the array for processes as p. So as we have implemented both the algorithms in the same program, we have taken the two different arrays to represent the processes. So remember this here. So pq means it's a process array. So pq of I dot num equal to I plus 1. This is the I plus 1, it is initially 0 plus 1, it is 1. So the first process number will be equal to 1. So after that, scanf percentage f ampersand pq of I dot bt. Bt stands for bus time. So pq of I, pq of 0 means the first process's bus time is read into this particular variable. So whatever the bus time we have read, so this will be assigned to that process is the remaining time, because initially bus time is equal to remaining time, because we have not yet started the execution. So this will be continued for all the processes. So as a result, we read the bus time of all the processes in the data member bt with respect to every process. So along with that, we will initialize the process numbers also for every process starting from 1, and also we initialize the remaining time of every process as the bus time of every process. So after this, we need one more information. So here we'll read the quantum time. So to read this, we have the printf enter the time quantum. So to read that, we have scanf percentage d ampersand tq. So in tq stands for time quantum. We read the time quantum value, and once we have these two things, that is bus time and of all the processes and the time quantum, you can call this round robin function. So when you call this round robin, you will be passing the number of processes as an argument. So let us see how this function is implemented. So this is the body of this round robin function. So round robin, it takes argument n. So initially what it will do is, it will calculate the total burst time. So it is done here, that is for I equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, total 1 is equal, plus we have used the shorthand operator here, total 1 equal to total 1 plus pq of I dot burst time. So total 1, it is already initialized to 0.00. So total 1 plus equal to pq of I dot bus time. So for all the processes bus time, the sum of all the bus times is stored in the variable total 1 now. We'll simply display that on the screen, that is printf sum of bt, that is bus time equal to percentage point 2f. Actually it is not required, just for our reference we have displayed this. So after this, we initialize the variable k equal to 0, and after this we have used the do while loop here. So do starts here, and the terminating condition is while tq underscore used is not equal to total 1. So total 1 is nothing but the total bus time. So until the entire bus time is exhausted, this particular do while loop will continue to execute, because this tq underscore used will indicate how much amount of time the processes are allowed for the execution. So that's why this tq underscore used is also initialized to 0 to indicate initially there is no any process that has executed. So in this do while loop, again we start with this for loop. So for I equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus. So what we have to do here? So here, whenever a particular process arrives, there are two possible situations. Because you consider our round robin scheduling algorithm, so whenever a process arrives, that is P1, So it will be having the burst time, and we have to check whether this burst time is less than that of the quantum time, or if it is greater than the quantum time. If the process time being you don't consider P1, you consider P2. So for process P2, the burst time is 3, but the time quantum is 4. So although time quantum is 4, we cannot run this process P2 for 4 milliseconds. Why? Because the burst time itself is 3 milliseconds. So that's why we have to run only this P2 for only 3 milliseconds, although the time quantum is 4 milliseconds. So that's why checking this one is very important. See if this is less than this one. If this is not less than this one, if it is greater than this one, what we have to do? So in this case, the P1 cannot be allowed to execute for 24 milliseconds at one stretch. So here what we do here is, so first it will be allowed to execute only for 4 milliseconds. So once you execute for 4 milliseconds, what we have to do? So you have to subtract this 4 from this particular 24. Okay. So that will get the remaining time as 20, and after that you have to start executing the remaining processes. Okay. So the same thing is implemented in our program. So that's what first we check whether the PQ of I dot RT is greater than 0. So as I told you, PQ of I represents the I is equal to 0, means PQ of 0 represents the first process. So first we'll check whether the first process's remaining time is equal to 0, because see, this is in the continuous loop. So each time we have to check the remaining time for all the processes. So here if the remaining time is greater than 0, that indicates the process still needs the execution. So then only we have to consider the remaining part. Okay. So that's why here whenever this PQ of I dot RT is greater than 0 and PQ of I dot RT is less than or equal to time quantum. So that's what I told you. There are two possible situations here. So the remaining time. So already we know that whenever we read the burst time in the case 1, so we have initialized the remaining time is equal to burst time only. Okay, so that's why whatever the burst time of that process is there, that is equal to the remaining time at the beginning. So later it may change. So that's why we only consider the remaining time, because here if you consider after executing in the first stretch, the remaining time will be 20, but the burst time remains 24 only. So that's why we have to consider the remaining time. Okay. So here if the remaining time is less than or equal to time quantum, what we have to do? We have to allow this process to execute for the amount of time that is equal to RT. This is similar to the example P2, P3, where the remaining time is 3 and the time quantum is 4. Okay. So that is done here. So TQ underscore used, this indicates how much amount of time the processes have executed. So as you are going to allow the process PQ of I to run for RT amount of time, so we add this to TQ used. So it is TQ used equal to TQ used plus PQ of I dot RT. So after that you have to add this value to the turnaround time also. So PQ of I dot TT equal to TQ underscore used. So this value, because the turnaround time indicates the ending time of every process. So this indicates the turnaround time of every process. Okay. So that whatever the TQ used value is there, that itself is the turnaround time. So this is recorded in the data member TT of process PQ of I. So similarly here the waiting time of the process PQ of I is also updated. So the waiting time already you know, this is equal to the turnaround time minus the burst time of that particular process. So after that we'll also make the PQ of I dot RT equal to 0, that is remaining time equal to 0. Because why we have to make remaining time equal to 0? Because the remaining time of this is less than or equal to time quantum, means whatever the remaining time is there, so for that duration the process will be allowed to execute. So that's why whenever it completes the execution, the remaining time will be equal to 0. Okay, and accordingly we increment the value of k. So this is if these two conditions are true. So else if the first condition is true, that is if PQ of I dot RT is greater than 0. Okay, means here if the first condition is true, the second condition is false. Second condition is false means the remaining time of that process is not less than or equal to time quantum, means it is greater than time quantum. This is similar to process P1 of our example. Okay, so after executing the first iteration, the remaining time of P1 will be 20. This is greater than 4. So that's why again out of 20, the process P1 will be allowed to execute only for 4 milliseconds. Okay, so that is what we implemented here. So else if PQ of I dot RT is greater than 0, means only this condition is true, this condition is false, means this condition is false, means the PQ of I dot RT is greater than time quantum TQ. So if that is the case, what you have to do? You have to allow this process PQ of I to run only for TQ of milliseconds, and after that you have to subtract this TQ from the remaining time. Okay, so that is what we have done here. So you have to add that TQ to this TQ underscore used, the same one, that is TQ underscore used equal to TQ underscore used plus TQ. Okay, and after that PQ of I dot remaining time equal to PQ of I dot remaining time minus TQ. Why TQ minus? Because the process PQ has allowed to be executed for TQ amount of time. So that's why out of remaining time, whatever the remaining time it has, the process PQ was able to run for a TQ amount of time. So that's why we have to subtract this from PQ of I dot RT, and after that we have to increment the value of K by 1. So after this here we have again one more else if the first, that is PQ of I dot RT is less than 0. Okay, so here if the remaining time is less than 0 means that indicates an error condition, because the burst time cannot be a negative value. So that indicates the user have entered the wrong value. So in that case we'll display simply message as printf error bt negative, means burst time is negative, and after that exit 1 means we'll stop the execution of this particular program only. So this will be continued each time until the TQ of TQ underscore used will be equal to total 1. So hope you understood this, how exactly it will work. So what is this TQ underscore used? This will indicate the turnaround time of that particular turnaround time of the entire thing. That okay. So that's why here this should be whenever this is equal to total 1, that is the total burst time. So that indicates you have moved till this particular position. So when see, we know that in this example the total 1 will be equal to 30 and TQ underscore used will be initially 4. So after that it becomes 7, after that it becomes 10, after that it becomes 14, after that it becomes 18, after that it becomes 22, after that 26, and after that 30. So when TQ underscore used becomes 30, the total 1 is also 30. So when both are same, this do while loop will stop its execution. Okay, so in this way this round robin scheduling algorithm can be implemented. So after this you have to just calculate the values. So first we have to calculate the sum of the waiting time. So for that we have for I equal to 0, I less than and I plus plus sum underscore wt equal to sum underscore wt plus pq of I dot wait time. So after that we calculate the sum of turnaround time also. It is for I equal to 0, I less than and I plus plus sum underscore tt equal to sum underscore tt plus pq of I dot tt. Okay, so after this we have to display these values. So we'll display the total waiting time equal to percentage 0.2f. It is present in the variable sum underscore wt calculated. So after that we will also display the average waiting time. So average waiting time equal to percentage 0.2f. So we have the sum. So the sum of sum underscore wt divided by n will give you the average waiting time. So after that we'll display turnaround time equal to percentage 0.2f. It is present in the variable sum underscore tt, and after that we'll also display the average turnaround time equal to percentage 0.2f. It is present in the variable sum tt divided by n. So in this way you can implement the round robin scheduling algorithm in this C program. Okay, so after this we'll consider the next scheduling algorithm here. So the next scheduling algorithm is SRTF, that is shortest remaining time first scheduling algorithm. So here it is shown here for this SRTF the choice number will be 2. So accordingly in case 2 will have the code for the shortest remaining time first scheduling algorithm. Okay, so before we again see this shortest time remaining first algorithm, so first we'll see one example, and after that we'll see how exactly this is implemented here. Okay, So here I have actually drawn on a paper in an example of the shortest remaining time for scheduling algorithm. So how exactly it works. So for the shortest remaining time for scheduling algorithm, we need the process numbers and bus time. Along with the process numbers and bus time, you should also know the arrival time of every process. Okay, because the arrival time indicates at what time that particular process was available for the execution, or at what time that process has entered the ready queue. So here, as the name itself indicates, shortest remaining time first means each time you have to check, you have to search for a process whose remaining time is shortest, and that should be allowed for the execution here. So here in our example, we have taken 4 processes, that is, this is P0, P1, P2 and P3. So the arrival time of these processes is 0, 1, 2, 3, and the burst time of these processes is 8, 4, 9 and 5. Okay. So after this you just see here that already we have the processes arranged in the particular order, that is in the increasing order of the arrival time. If not, you have to first arrange the processes in the increasing order of the arrival time. So that's why in our program first we arrange the processes in the increasing order of arrival time, and after that we'll go for this particular process. So after this, here we have already I have drawn the Gantt chart here. So as per the Gantt chart, at arrival time 0, only process P0 is there. So obviously the P0 will be allowed for the execution. So here it will be allowed for the execution for the 1 millisecond. So from P0 will be executed from 0 to 1 millisecond. So after the lapse of 1 millisecond, the process P1 will also enter the ready queue. So now we have the 2 processes, that is P0 and P1. So what is the remaining time of this P0? The burst time of this P0 is 8. Out of this 8 milliseconds, it has executed for 1 millisecond. So the remaining time will be 8 minus 1, it is 7. Whereas for P1, the burst time is 4, that itself is the remaining time. So as per the name, you have to consider a process which is having the shortest remaining time. So although process P1 has executed for 1 millisecond, but you have one more process, that is P1. So its remaining time is 4 millisecond. So this 4 is less than 7. So that's why after P0, this P1 will be allowed for the execution. So that's you can see here. After P0, the P1 will start its execution. So starting from the at time 1. Okay. So after this again, instead of this timing, you consider this one, because this will show exactly how our program works. So both are same. So instead of showing this single block for 1 to 5, we have shown individual blocks for 1 to 5. That is the difference. So here this P1 will be executed from again for 1 milliseconds, that is from 1 to 2. So at time 2, you can see the process P2 will also enter the ready queue. So now we have 3 processes in the ready queue, that is P0, P1 and P2. So as P1 has executed for 1 millisecond, you have to subtract 1 from the burst time. So 4 minus 1, the remaining time of P1 will become 3. Okay. So again you have to compare the remaining times here. So remaining time of P0 is 7, remaining time of P1 is 3, remaining time of P2 is 9. So out of 7, 3 and 9, 3 is lowest. So that's why P1 itself is allowed to continue for the execution. Okay. So that's why again from 2 to 3, so once again the P1 will be allowed to execute till the time 3. So at time 3, you can see the another new process, that is P3 will also enter the ready queue. Now we have 4 processes in the ready queue, that is P0, P1, P2, P3. So once again you have to compare the remaining time of these processes. So what is the remaining time of P0? The remaining time of P0 is 7. Remaining time of P1 is, it was 3, now it has executed 1 more millisecond, so it is now 2. So the remaining time of P0 is 7, remaining time of P1 is 2, remaining time of P2 is 9, and remaining time of P3 is 5. So it is 7, 2, 9 and 5. So out of this 2 is shortest, so that's why the P1 itself is allowed to execute for another 2 milliseconds. Why? Because after this we don't have any new process. So that's why as the P1 is having the lowest bus time, so that itself will be allowed to execute for another 2 milliseconds, that is till 5. So at time 5 the P1 completes its execution, so it has completed the execution for more milliseconds, so that's why the remaining time of this will become 0. So after this, once again the remaining times are calculated. So the remaining time of P0 is 7 here, remaining time of P1 is 0, remaining time of P2 is 9, and remaining time of P3 is 5. So once again you have to find the shortest one. But mathematically, there is one funny thing here. Mathematically, if you see, the 0 itself is the shortest one. So that's why by mistake your system should not consider this process. So that's why in our program what we do, whenever the remaining time becomes 0, we assign -1 to this particular process, so that it will not be considered for the further processes. Okay, so that's why here now which process will be considered? The remaining time here is 7, 0, 9 and 5. Don't consider 0 here. 7, 9, 5. So out of 7, 9, 5 you have the shortest is 5, so that's why P3 will be considered for the execution. So the P3 will start its execution from 5. The bus time is 5. So 5 to 10, the P3 will be executed. Okay. So after this, the remaining time of P3 will also become 0. So it has completed its entire execution. So the two processes are remaining, P0 and P2. P0 remaining time is 7 and P2 remaining time is 9. So 7, 9, 9. So P0 is having less one. So that's why I will come back to this here. So you have completed P3. That time 10. So from 10 the P0 is allowed to execute for the remaining bus time, that is 7. So from 10 to 17 the P0 will be executed, that is 10 to 17 the P0 will be executed, and after that the remaining time is for the next process is 9 for P2. So P2 will be allowed for execution for 9 milliseconds, that is 17 to the 26. So in this way the shortest remaining time scheduling algorithm will work. Now we'll see, we'll go back to our program to see how exactly this particular algorithm is implemented in C. Okay. So come back here. So as we saw, case 2 is for the shortest remaining time first algorithm. So we'll display this heading, and below this we'll read the details. So printf enter the number of processes. So again we read that in the variable n. So after this we have called the function srtf of n for the same. So here in the function srtf of n, so first we read the bus time and arrival time of all the processes. So for that we have the for loop here. So for I equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus. So first we add the process number to all the processes, that is p of I dot num equal to I plus 1 for all the processes. So after that we have to read the bus time. So enter the bus time of process %d. It is the first process, that is p of I dot num. You can write, else you can write I plus 1 as we did in the last one, because I plus 1 is equal to p of I dot num. So after that, so that's what we read that in ampersand p of I dot bt. So that's what I told you. In the round robin scheduling algorithm, we have taken the array as pq of I. The pq array we have taken to store the process value, the process, and here in the srtf algorithm we have used the array p for the process. So the bus time is added to the data member of corresponding this, that is p of I dot bt for all the processes. Along with this we read the arrival time also for every process. So it is read in the p of I dot at. So again we initialize the remaining time for all the processes equal to the bus time, and we'll take ft equal to 0.00. So after that we'll also calculate the total bus time in the variable total. So in the round robin algorithm we have taken the variable as total 1 for the total bus time. Here we have used the variable total for the total bus time. So here total equal to total plus p of I dot bt for all the processes. So here through this for loop we will read the bus time of all the processes, arrival time of all the processes, will assign process numbers, will initialize the remaining time equal to bus time, and will also calculate the total bus time. So once you calculate the total bus time and we initialize all the data structures of the process for this, so now we'll start executing the actual code. So as I told you while discussing that sample example, so in order to use this, first the processes should be arranged as per the arrival time. So in the increasing order of arrival time, all the processes should be arranged. So usually the processes will be arranged in the increasing order of arrival time only, but still while entering, the user may enter the details in some other order. So that's why it is better to sort the processes first according to the arrival time. So for that we have used the bubble sort technique here. So it's very simple. That is for j equal to 0, j less than n, j plus plus. For I equal to 0, I less than n minus j minus 1, j I plus plus. So each time we check if p of I is I dot at is greater than p of I plus 1 dot at, we have to just swap. So already you know how the bubble sort algorithm will work. So after this, all the processes will be sorted in the ascending order as per the arrival time. So the first process indicates the process that has arrived first, and last process indicates the process that has arrived last in the sequence. So now after this, what we do is, so instead of directly operating on the array P, so here we have taken one more array, that is PR parallel to P. So by this for loop, what we do is, so we'll simply copy the process number, bus time, arrival time, FT, and the BT into the corresponding variables of this particular PR. So that's what PR of I dot num equal to PR of P of I dot num. So PR of I dot BT equal to the P of I dot BT, PR of I dot AT equal to P of I dot AT, PR of I dot FT equal to P of I dot FT, and P of I dot remaining time equal to the bus time of P of I. So after this, what we do is, so we'll initialize PR of I dot RT equal to total. So this indicates the total time remaining for the execution. So in our example also we have taken here. So if you just add up all the bus times, so you'll get the total value as 26. So this is assigned to the initial remaining time, means the total remaining time of execution is 26 initially. Okay, so after this we'll parallelly see this both of these. I think it is possible to place both parallelly the same screen. Okay, fine. So now here we start the execution of this particular algorithm. So initially, as I told you, PR of I dot RT, we take it as equal to total, and after that in CPU. So what this in CPU variable? So in CPU indicates presently which process is allowed for the execution. Okay. So here as we know that all the processes are sorted in ascending order, and so by default we consider the first process for the execution. So I value starts from 0. So initially we take in CPU equal to I. So that's what here we have taken, I is equal to 0, and initially in CPU will be equal to 0. Okay. So initially in CPU equal to 0. So after that we have the for loop here in order to check, because here each time you have to check, you have to search for a process which is having the shortest remaining time. So each time you have to, because in our example also we saw, each time you have to check which process is having the shortest remaining time. Okay, based on the arrival time. So that's why here we have used on variable iteration variable TE, which is initialized to 0, and TE will be executed till the total, that is the total bus time. Okay. So in this for loop we have one more for loop, that is for I equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, for all the values of n, that is starting from I. So this is for every process. What we do, so first we check whether the PR of I dot num is not equal to -1. So here while explaining this, I told you that when a process P1 completes its execution, instead of keeping the value 0 here, what we do, because when you start finding the smallest one, so the 0 will be the smallest one. So that's why whenever the remaining time becomes 0, we assign -1 to this. So that's why the -1 indicates you have already completed the execution of that process. So here we check that whether if PR of I dot num is equal to -1. If this is not the case and PR of I dot arrival time is not less than or equal to TE. So this TE indicates the effective time, the time stamp. So at 0th time, only one process will be available as per our example. For the first time, 2 processes are available. At time 3 processes are executed. So that's why each time, at each time stamp, we have to compare the arrival time of that process. Means here, if at a time stamp 2, how many processes are there? 3 processes are there. How it is known to you? You have to compare the arrival time. So you have to check whether the arrival time is less than or equal to the time of T. T is 2 here. So for all the 3 cases, the arrival time is less than or equal to T. So that's why you have to consider only these 3 processes. Okay. So after this, the next one is you have to check whether PR of I dot burst time is less than PR of in CPU dot remaining time. Okay. Because as I told you, each time you have to consider a process whose remaining time is which is having the shortest remaining time. So presently you have taken the process I. Okay, so it is present in CPU. In general, you remember in CPU is the presently executing process. So here you have to check whether the new process, that is whatever the new process you have taken, so whether that new process is burst time is less than as that of the currently executing process. If this condition is true, then what you have to do? So whatever this process I is there, so this you have to make as the in CPU, means you have to start executing this process. Why? Because presently this process is executing, and here if this newly arrived process's burst time is less than the currently executing process, so you have to consider this one. It's very simple. You have to just try to understand these particular conditions. So based on that, you will come to know how exactly this will work. It's very simple program. So here, if this is the case, we will assign I to the in CPU. What is this I? I indicates the process number. So that indicates which process is currently executing. So similarly, if this is not the case, if any one of these 3 conditions is false, what it will do? The control will come back here. I will be incremented by 1 and it will consider for the next one. So as a result, for all the processes, these conditions are tested, and you have to consider the smallest, the process which is having the smallest burst time, and for that process will be assigned the value of in CPU. Okay. So once that process is allowed with the value in CPU, so what it will do is, so we'll simply display the process number of that to indicate which process is executed. So after displaying that, we'll decrement the value of remaining time of that, because here by displaying this will indicate that the corresponding process is allowed for the execution of 1 millisecond. So after 1 millisecond, again the same process is to be, because after 1 millisecond again the timestamp will be incremented by 1. So that's why here after this again the control will come back here. But here this is not the statement. After this again we have the remaining statements also. After this the control will come back here. Okay, so after this what we do is, so after executing the PR of in CPU for 1 millisecond, again we have to check, okay, whether the remaining time of that has become equal to 0. If this has become equal to 0, what you have to do? You have to assign -1 so that it will not be considered for the future execution. So that's why, so for that what we do here, so PR of in CPU dot ft equal to t plus 1, that is timestamp plus 1. So after that PR of in CPU dot num equal to -1. We'll assign -1 so that it will not be considered, so that this particular condition becomes false and it will not be considered for the execution. So after this again what we do? So we write in CPU equal to in CPU -1. So for the next one, okay. So after this again what we'll do is, so we have if in CPU equal to -1 and PR of I dot num is not equal to -1. So if this is the case, so what we do is in CPU equal to 0 and PR of in CPU dot remaining time equal to 100. Some random value we put and we'll simply discard that from the consideration if it has completed the execution. Okay. So this will be continued for all the possible values of T. So you just remember this T will be executed. This is for the timestamps and this is for all the processes. So that's why I have traced the program here for some more iterations. That is, initially the CPU, in CPU we have taken 0. So when I is equal to 0, so all these 3 conditions will be true and in CPU will be the process 0 only. So when process 0 will be executed for 1 millisecond, at 1 millisecond we have the two processes P0 and P1. Okay. So here the first condition is true. The I is equal to 1 now. So when I is equal to 1, PR of 1, that is the second, PR of 1 means the P1 process. So P1 process number is not equal to -1. So its arrival time is also less than or equal to TE. TE is now 2, T is now 1, so it is less than this one. And the third condition is we have to remember here, we have to check PR of I. PR of I is 1. So the process P1's burst time is how much? P1's burst time is 4, and currently executing process is here in CPU is 0. So process 0's burst time is remaining time. Remaining time is 8 minus 1, it is 7. So here you can see the P1's burst time is 4 and its remaining time is 7. So this one is less than this one, the condition is true. So once this condition becomes true, what happens? Whatever that new process I is there, so that will be allocated the execution. So in CPU will be equal to I. Okay. So that's what in CPU was 0 initially. Now in CPU will become 1. Why? Because the 4 is less than 7. So this condition is true. That is, here the burst time of first P1 is 4 and the remaining time of P0 is 7. So 4 less than 7, the condition is true. So that's why in CPU equal to 1. So in CPU equal to 1, so this will be displayed on the screen and the remaining time of that will be decremented by 1. So that's what we have. I have shown here separately. So after executing P0, P1 will execute for 1 millisecond. So it will be decremented. So again these remaining things will be executed for all the timestamps. Okay. So in this way this shortest remaining time first algorithm will be implemented. Okay. So you try to understand this code, and if possible you try to trace this particular example for the further iterations in order to understand this very thoroughly. Okay. And it's very easy. So after this now we have to simply calculate the waiting time and the turnaround time. So for that we have this for loop here. So for I equal to 0, I less than and I plus plus. So PR of I dot waiting time equal to PR of I dot FT minus PR of I dot burst time minus PR of I dot arrival time. Okay. So after that sum 1 equal to sum 1 plus PR of I dot waiting time. So the sum of all waiting times. So after this we have PR of I dot turnaround time equal to PR of I dot waiting time plus the PR of I dot burst time. It's a standard formula. So after that we calculate the sum of all the burst time turnaround times in the variable sum2. So sum2 equal to sum2 plus PR of I dot turnaround time. So after this we have to just display these values. So first we have printf total waiting time equal to %2f. It is present in the sum1 calculated. So after that average waiting time is equal to sum1 divided by n. So after this total turnaround time equal to %0.2f. It is present in the variable sum2. Okay. So after this we have to display the average turnaround time equal to %2f. It is sum2 divided by n. Okay. So in this way this shortest remaining time first scheduling algorithm can be implemented through this particular user defined function. Okay. So hope all of you understood this particular program. So after this case 2, in case 3 we have simply exit. So still if you have any confusion or if you have not understood any part of this particular program, so please feel free to discuss with me in order to understand the concepts. So now let us execute this particular program now. So first we'll compile this program, and after this we'll go for the execution. So as we saw here in our program, first it will display, first it is asking, it is just going to display the choice. So 1 is for round robin, 2 is for SRTF, and 3 is for exit. So first we'll run the round robin only. The choice is 1. So it will display the heading as round robin scheduling algorithm. So enter the number of processes. So I will consider our example program only. So in a round robin, so here we have 3 processes. So the number of processes is 3. So enter the burst time of process 1. The burst time of process 1 is 24. So burst time of process 2 is 3. Burst time of process 3 is also 3. So the time quantum is 4. So see here the sum of burst time is 30, that is known. So the total waiting time will become 17, the average waiting time will be 5.67, total turnaround time will be 47, and total average turnaround time will be 15.67. You just calculate these values manually and you compare that with the calculated values. I have compared, these are correct. So the same thing you have to do also. You have to do, and you consider some example, some other examples also to run this. So after this, let us run the second algorithm, that is SRTF, shortest remaining time, first. So for this, again we consider whatever the example we have discussed. So here how many processes we have taken? So in our example we have taken 4 processes. So enter the bus time of process 1. So the first process bus time is 8. So the arrival time of first process is 0. So for the second process the bus time is 4, the arrival time is 1. For the third process the bus time is 9 and arrival time is 2. For the fourth process the bus time is 5 and arrival time is 3. So see here whatever the Gantt chart we have seen, the same is represented here. So each time in CPU indicates which process is presently executing. So as we saw, initially P0 will be executed for 1 millisecond. So after that P1 will start its execution, and how many minutes, how many milliseconds it will execute? It will be executed for 4 milliseconds. So that's why you can see 1 we have 4 times, that is 1, 2, 3, 4. So for 4 milliseconds this P1 will be executed. So from 1 to 5, and after that P3 will be executed from 5 to 10 minutes for the 5 milliseconds. So here we have 3, 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So after that P0 remaining time is 7. So for 7 milliseconds the P0 will be executed from 10 to 17. So you can see the 0 we have 7 times. So after that the remaining time for P2 it's 9. So for 9 milliseconds P2 will be executed from 17 to 26. So here you can see the 2 is for 9 times. Okay. So after this if you calculate the values of the total waiting time, it comes out to be 26. Average waiting time is 6.50. Total turnaround time is 52. Average turnaround time is 13. Okay. So in this way you can implement both round robin scheduling algorithm and SRTF scheduling algorithm. Hope all of you understood. So as I told, if you have any confusion, please feel free to discuss with me in order to clarify your doubts. Thank you.